whatever. Because in my experience with this, and because I went to the schools I told you, all my experiences with that group of people, corporate exec, full of those stories. You know, they made mistake after mistake, which they would tell you about. Didn't undermine their. They were always able to blame somebody else, something else that scraped them through. And had they not been able to, they would have been replaced by another person who did the same thing for as long as they could. And they knew it. They would talk about it at family events. That's how I know.
Yeah, that
I understand that you want the outside world to look at it this way, but
well,
it's not my experience.
interesting. But again, what's that kind of thing? At the risk of saying human nature again,
Yeah.
I wonder what kind of system allows for that more versus less. This is the question of. I would call that. Let's put that under the umbrella term of corruption. Which system allows for more corruption?
But remember that the way I defined a different system.
A lot of fascinating questions here. So one is, to what degree? So there's human nature. To what degree does communism, a lack of exploitation of the working class, naturally emerge? If you leave two people together in a room and come back a year later, if you leave 5 people together in a room, if you leave 100 people and 1,000 people, it seems that humans form hierarchies naturally. So the clever, the charismatic, the sexy, the muscular, the powerful, however you define that, start becoming a leader and start to do maybe exploitation in a non-negative sense, a more generic sense, starts to become an employer, not in a capitalist sense, but just as a human. Here, you go do this, and in exchange, I will give you this. Just becomes the leadership role, right? So the question is, yes, okay, it would be nice. The idea sort of communism would be nice to not steal
nice
from the
in
world.
theory, but it doesn't work in practice because of human nature.
Because of human nature. Thank you. So what can we say about leveraging human nature to achieve some of these ends?
There's so many ways of responding, in no particular order. Here's some of them. The history of the human race, as best I can tell, is a history in which a succession of social forms of society, arise, and as they do, they rule out some kinds of human behavior on the grounds that they are socially disruptive and unacceptable. The argument isn't really then, is there a need or an instinct? Is there some human nature that makes people want to do this? Well, whatever that is, this has to be repressed, or else we don't have a society. And Freud helps us to understand that repression is going on all the time, and it has consequences. It's not a finished project. You repress it, it's gone. It doesn't work like that. So, for example, when very different slaves produce a surplus which the master gets. Slaves produce a surplus which the master gets.
Well, they waited until Friday to do it, but the Biden administration has finally...
Okay, I found one that does. I found a couple of his videos that don't that are not UFO, outer space, and that kind of crap. So here's one. I don't know how to say her name, so let's find out here.
To have the free markets in order to build prosperity. And prosperity means economic power. If you have economic power, no one messes with you. Or if they're gonna do it, they're gonna have to think twice. And when they do, they're gonna have to pay consequences.
The following is a conversation with Magat Wade, an entrepreneur who is passionate about creating positive change in Africa through economic empowerment.
All right,
This
we'll try.
is the Lex Friedman Podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Magat Wade. You were born in Senegal.
Mhm.
You have lived and traveled across the world. So let me ask you, what is the soul of Senegal? Like its people, its culture, its history. Can you try to sneak up on telling us what is the spirit of its people?
Teranga. Teranga. Teranga, it's a Wolof word. Wolof is the main indigenous language of Senegal, and it means hospitality. That is what us, the people of Senegal, are known for. And it transpires in everything that we do, everything that we say. It's a place where, I guess, with hospitality goes this concept of warmth. So we are a very warm people. So in a nutshell, that's us. That's us. The place where you come, and everybody will just embrace you, make you feel very comfortable, make you feel like you're the only person in the world, and that we've been waiting for you our whole life, right? So that's my country.
So that's for people in Senegal, people in Africa, or also people across the world. Weird strangers from all walks of life. So hospitality towards
Yes,
everyone.
for everyone, especially towards the foreigner, because it's very ingrained in us this understanding that especially the foreigner. The foreigner is called foreigner because the foreigner is coming from somewhere else. So if someone has taken the time and the energy, whether in a forced manner or because it's a choice, to travel so far to come to a place that's not theirs to start with, that's why we're foreigners again, then it is your duty to welcome them, to be uber welcoming to them.
So there's not a fear of the foreigner. There's not a suspicion of the foreigner.
No. And I think this goes with the other way around. Maybe it has to do with just, when you feel good about yourself, when you're very proud of yourself, it's very easy to open yourself to others. And I'm wondering if that's not, the other side of the equation, in a way. So no, we don't have a fear towards a foreigner.
So when you have a pride of your culture, the pride of your own people, like it's easier to sort of embrace. I mean, it's interesting how these kind of cultures emerge because, the Slavic countries are sometimes colder. They're slower to trust others. We're now here in Austin, Texas. One of the reasons I fell in love with this place when I showed up is there's that same hospitality as compared to other cities I've lived in, sort of Boston, Philadelphia, San Francisco. There's a hesitation to open up, to be fragile, to be caring before understanding what I can gain from you kind of calculation. It's really interesting, and I wonder how those kinds of dynamics emerge because there's certainly parts of the world, Austin is one of them, where you just feel the kindness, just radiate without knowing kindness from strangers.
Yes.
One thing, and I had the same experience after having lived in San Francisco first. Then we went to New York. Then we came to Austin. When we came to Austin, I felt it took me a while. I think
Hey, get out of here.
what I found in Austin, people just people, they're real. They're real. Unlike what you were saying, I feel like in these other places, people, it's a destination for people who want to come and perform. And I think maybe the early San Francisco people, it was different for them. But later, as prosperity started to come in and success comes in, then you attract different breed. At first, where are the people who made it, who comes to that, we have found that wherever you're looking at two countries that start out the same, we're talking the same people, East Germany, West Germany, South Korea, North Korea. Very similar people to start with, right? But yet, radical outcomes. I know that today Germany is united, but we're talking about back in the days when you had East and Western Bloc. Same people, very different outcomes. Like I said, South Korea, North Korea, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, very different nations. Dubai compared to Singapore or to England, very different yet the same outcome. So it seems to me like whenever we're looking at prosperity, if a nation is prosperous, regardless of whatever other shenanigan they might be running, whatever other operating software they might be running for anything that's not related to business, if on the business side they are proponents of a free markets, or at least a base level of free markets, we know that such countries will create prosperity.
So what are the aspects of the operating systems that lead to Singapore and to a South Korea and all that kind of stuff? So can you speak to different elements that enable the toolkit for entrepreneurs?
Sure. And maybe here, let me just maybe illustrate it with my own story, and then I can take you back to...
Maka, tell us your story.
No.
Who are you?
It's just because it started with me coming here. You shouldn't be a robot or anything, and now it looks like I've known you for, we known each other for 12. And then you're like, tell people. And then, no. But so this is where this question, even when you ask me how are some countries, how do some countries become prosperous? That question, Lex, I had it when I was 7 or so. That's when my family moved me to from Senegal. For the first time of my life, I left my country, I left my continent, and I was headed to Europe to go join my people, my family, my parents, who were there as economic migrants. My parents had migrated for a better life, as so many people have to. So many people have to, coming from poorer places, coming from low-income countries.
You saw the difference
Yes!
between the two places?
How else would you call it? Here you are in Senegal, minding your own business, causing tons of trouble everywhere. You know, just being a happy, free-range kid that I was.
Yeah. So you were always a troublemaker, not just now. Okay. Great.
Life wouldn't be fun without it.
Yeah, and of course, I agree.
Right? So, because even you know, like, you're like all put together, like front. I know there's a lot of troublemaking behind you.
Desperately trying to keep it together.
I know you are, but with me, I'm gonna totally bring it out. So
Good.
just, yeah. So,
You saw the difference.
right, I saw the different. I'm walking in here, back home, and I tell people this story because to me it's a defining story. Back home, to take a shower, it takes time. Grandma has to, make the charcoal catch on a little stove that you use at, when you go camping. And then she puts a pot of water on it. It boils. She takes it, puts it in a bigger bucket, mixes it with some colder water. Then we put a little pot in it, and a stronger member of the family has to drag it to the shower. And then there, finally, I can proceed to take my shower. Here I'm in Germany in the middle of the winter, and my mom's like, "I got time for your shower." I'm like, I'm not getting naked. Where's the bottle? I'm just cold water. Where's the bucket of hot water? She's like, "Oh, you silly, come on, just jump in." And I jump in the shower, turn the buttons, the water is coming down, temperature, I'm playing with. It's like, are you kidding me?
So amazing.
I've been cheated out of life, my whole life.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. And then I'm like, oh, and all of these roads, they're paved roads, unlike back home. Everything is like sandy, and my feet are always ashy. I always have to wash off when I go back home, and your shoes get ruined most of the time. And it started, and I had this question, and it was just like, wow, how come they have this and we don't? So I was not being like, oh, how come they have all of this money? Oh, I was not that. It was just like, how come? And I think what I was alluding to was, how come life is so easy here? And back, it's not.
And easy, not in a negative sense,
No.
in a beautiful sense. Sometimes I get, just having traveled through the war zone, just to come back, traveling through Europe, back to America, I'll just get emotional just looking at the efficiency of things, like how easy it is, how we can, first of all, in Ukraine, you currently can't fly. right? It's a war zone. Just even the thing, transportation. You said roads. Yeah, the quality of roads in the United States is amazing. Just not, many of the places that to drive in Ukraine. You're talking about. I mean, really bad conditions of roads, and I'm sure in many parts of Africa and many parts of the world, the roads are even worse.
Right, right.
And outdoor, having a indoor toilet is a fascinatingly awesome luxury to have.
It is. And don't take me wrong, Lex. Do we have some great roads now in many parts of Africa?
Yes. Yes.
Main arteries, great roads. You're like, whoa, this is moving. Yes, we do. But definitely more today than in my time growing up. Um, do we have, a country like Nigeria that just birthed 6 unicorns last year alone? Yes. Do we have the African youth out there being so amazing and, living their lives? Yes, we have all of that. But it is still, unfortunately, just like we're scratching the surface.
Yeah.
And those people still are getting all of that accomplished, literally swimming through molasses. This is some of the most gross, immoral, unfair waste of human capital.
And so that is started with you as a 7-year-old asking, wait a minute, how do amazing people in Europe do this and the amazing people in Africa don't?
Yeah, and that's a key word, amazing, because that's what I realized later. Because it was not always like that for me, amazing and amazing, right? I knew instinctively that, of course, we are amazing too. But so eventually the question became, how? So I went from how come they have this and we don't, to the country as I'm growing up and researching, because it stayed with me. When I tell you I'm obsessed, I'm haunted. I am haunted. So you can laugh all you want, but it's so the question became, how come some countries like the United States, Singapore, are rich, and some others like mine and many others in Africa are poor? That became the question. And along the line, like along the road, I continued on living my life, wondering about this question. And I've heard all types of reasons as to supposedly why that might be the case. Some people with a very straight face are still peddling the IQ theory, according to which, come on, darling, it's not your fault. Your skin color goes with a gene sequence that just doesn't allow you to be as smart as white people are. And it's not your fault, but just accept it. That stuff is still out there. It's very real. And I have to hear it. And others would say to me, oh, it's just because, you guys don't have an adequate level of education. And I say, maybe you gotta go say that to most of the street sellers you go see in Senegal. You go up to many of these street sellers in Senegal. They are wading through cars, in moving cars, under the hot sun, fumes thrown at their face, trying to sell you anything and that you think you might be able to use. Whether we're talking about an ironing board, to an umbrella, to Q-tips, to toothpicks, selling you whatever you need from your car. These are street sellers, and you ask them, dear, do you have any degree? Yeah, I have this graduate degree in math or in literature, whatever. Some very, very educated people. Yet they're right there. This is what they're doing.
So that's just that scale, wasted human potential.
Thank you.
So that has to do, the wasted human potential has to do now with the system, with something about the laws, something about sort of the things that limit or enable the entrepreneur.
Yes, because at that point I've heard this. I heard people say, "Yeah, your IQ is no good. Yeah, you don't have enough degrees, or you're not educated." Yeah, some people would even say it's because you guys are malnourished. You're malnourished. You need to be fed. others, oh well, maybe I give you some shoes and maybe something is gonna change, whatever. And then, so I heard all of this nonsense, Lex. But guess what? But guess what? None of it made sense. Do you know why it didn't make sense? Because if any of that crap was true, why, oh why, is it that my parents or any other people from these places, and oh, and by the way, some people call up those places God-forsaken land. That's also the type of correct you always have to hear when it's not just flat out SHIT whole countries from, you know, one person a few years ago, president of this country.
That sentiment is sometimes there. Is what
It
you're
is.
saying.
It is. As I go on with my life, trying to find the answer to why are some countries like mine poor while others are rich, I'm hearing all of these reasons thrown at me, and then they make no sense. Because then, how come then, if my parents move, as it is usually anyone else who moves from a poorer nation to a nation that supposedly is rich, all of a sudden they get to manifest their greatest potential?